I think it is fair to say that the United States is closer to war with Iran than it ever has been in history. This, of course, as the US, Saudi, UAE coalition is carrying out more deadly raids and airstrikes in Yemen, upping, of course, the military assault on the larger proxy war that is happening between Iran and Saudi Arabia in Yemen, which, by the way, is creating the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. And it looks like there's only going to be more of a crisis ahead as we are seeing the push for war called on by no one other than Saudi Arabia itself, that said in its state-run newspaper, which pretty much is the mouthpiece of the government there, saying that America should launch surgical strikes against Iran. This, of course, as we are getting new intelligence, again, quote, big quotes here, intelligence that Iran is about to attack American targets in the Middle East because of pictures, allegedly, I want to see some of these pictures, that assembled missiles that were loaded on the back of boats in the Persian Gulf, and they're about to, and then these new intelligence reports are saying that this small aircraft, the missiles are in there, they're ready to go, and they're close to striking range of U.S. military bases. Jason, pull up the picture of U.S. military bases around Iran. Yes, anything Iran does military is close to U.S. bases, since there are so many U.S. bases all around Iran as a strategic choke point that has been established within the last few 18 years, since this has been the wet dream of the neoconservatives for that long. It has become an adult, and it's looking more and more likely like this scenario. But Jason, let's get into these new intelligence reports, which do deserve a lot of scrutiny, to say the least.
Yeah. So what I want to point out about this information, especially with the Daily Mail article, is they don't even mention in the beginning that Israel is the one that gave us this intelligence. And then let's look at this intelligence, all right? We've got Iranian-backed forces that supposedly had missiles, putting them on a small boat, small vessel, and in striking range. But then we got separate reports, Luke, that Iranian-backed forces were actually going to attack U.S. troops in Iraq. In combination, we needed to really up it with B-52 bombers, with more warships. Oh, yeah. And now the Air Force has decided to deploy 20 missiles that could zap the military's electronics of North Korea or Iran with powerful microwaves. Yes, we're going to use the microwave weapons possibly in this one, Luke. So we get to show off a little bit more of our technology. We get to rattle the drums of war. Actually might be able to beat those drums. And especially with the Saudi Arabians so boldly saying we need to do a surgical strike or a ground invasion. This is incredible. And remember, because of these supposed drone attacks by Yemen drones on these Saudi pipelines, no evidence has been given. Guess what? It was okay to just pound, and I mean pound, their main city. It's okay. No big deal. Their capital. They pounded their capital yesterday. Look at this.
Yeah, it's devastating. It's creating the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. This has been largely done by the United Kingdom, the United States, the Saudi-led coalition, creating just hell on earth. We're talking about millions of people on the brink of death because of starvation and disease. And this is just a small proxy war between the larger clash of civilizations here. Because when we look at all of this, this is what it is. It's a clash of civilizations between the Sunnis and the Shiites. And this is why the United States has been very vague here. This is why the intelligence reports have been extremely generalized, extremely just as broad as they can make them. And they're saying Iran and Iranian proxy forces, because what they mean by Iranian proxy forces is pretty much any other military force out there that is Shia Muslim. And there are a significant portion of Shia Muslims in the Iraqi military. And the Iraqi government doesn't really have control of them. So this could be in large part why the United States has moved out U.S. personnel just yesterday out of Iraq, And we have to understand the bigger things that are happening here should be worrying for everyone. If we look at the start of global conflicts, they usually start from small incremental events. The events here are small, but they're ratcheting up to be very big. We look at how this was all handled. The United States first started to increase sanctions on Iran, economic warfare, closing them off from the economic market, threatening Europe if they dared to intervene and trade with Iran. Now, the United States recognized the Iranian military as a terrorist force. Now the United States is sending in all their military under a lie. Again, the mainstream media was reporting new intelligence that supposedly was a threat. Again, there was a press release talking about how the military movement was set up a month before this new threat, which was all based on a lie. This is leading up to, again, the relatively small events geopolitically on the historical world stage, but these are escalations, and these escalations could get out of hand like other historical conflicts like World War II has. World War II started with small incremental escalations, and it looks like this is building up to a larger one. And it's building up to one where the Shias and the Sunnis are going to have a huge, huge conflict, and the United States is mainly backing the Sunnis, who have been predominantly responsible for global terrorism, who have been responsible for Al-Qaeda, who have been responsible for ISIS. And this is who John Bolton and Donald Trump are standing behind, a part of a coalition, bombing Yemen right now with creating the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. Wake up, America, because this is a message that you won't hear anywhere else. Even the alternative media has kind of put their tail between the legs and stopped talking about any form of reality or facts in these matters, which is utterly disgusting, turning their backs on the truth, becoming more pro-war, putting out the establishment talking points instead of questioning the absolute lunacy of just trying to create another conflict here. That's all.
And
yeah,
Luke,
yeah.
I want to reiterate, without any evidence that this was Iranian-backed at all, this bombardment happened, and it did not happen amongst military targets. Let me repeat that. It wasn't military targets that got hit. When I say this was the capital, let's read some quotes from people that actually live there about them targeting civilians. Now, we know that 6 at least are dead, 4 of them being children. These are very real lives, folks. But let's just read what somebody that lives in the area has to say. I know the street. There are no military targets there. There is no excuse from the Saudi-led coalition. It was a deliberate and systematic bombardment attacking civilians. Okay? Let me read another quote from a journalist, a Yemeni journalist that, again, lives among that area. Residential areas in the middle of Sana'a, in the most crowded areas, were randomly bombed, and many houses were reduced to the ground. This is the true face of war, folks. These, in many cases, are not military targets. Our government, our tax dollars, our president, who just vetoed us getting out of this mess, are killing civilians on behalf of the military-industrial complex and the goals of globalism.
Yeah, ultimately here, Saudi Arabia is blaming Iran directly for the Yemeni rebel drone strike. Again, there's a war happening in Yemen right now. Everything's just being blamed on proxy forces. Again, this is the wider class of civilizations that no one's really talking about, but is major. These are 2 huge populations that are going at it of Islam, that are only creating this, a worser, more violent, more deteriorating situation that already exists in that region. When you think it couldn't get any worse, well, it's getting worse right now, and it's all happening with the guise of supporting and helping thwart the threats. I mean, come on. Let's call it like it is. There's a lot of things you could be critical of Iran about. There's a lot of things you could be critical of Saudi Arabia about, but this, to me, is very, very, very dangerous escalation. We should keep our eyes on it. That's why we're doing so many stories on it. You look at our main channel, we did video after video after video about all the latest events, because this is worth covering. This is something worth actually really looking into, worth documenting, putting out there in the public record, because honestly, very few individuals do. And sadly, YouTube and Google demonetize, derank, and de-incentivize a lot of this content, hit us for it, and then they hurt us financially for it. But this is too important not to talk about, Jason. And this is why we still do it.
Yeah, that's right. Remember, when all non-essential U.S. personnel is being pulled out from the area, when there is an escalation of B-52s, of warships, and now even microwave weapons, we need to be aware of this. And again, we should really be talking about all these civilian deaths. It's a footnote. We don't even hear about it in this country. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. And that's why, to me, I think that this media organization is extremely important. If you think so too, please, please, please make sure you're subscribed to both News for a Change and We Are Change. We're doing 4 videos a day across 2 separate platforms. Thumbs this video up, share it on social media, but most importantly, get out there, make your voice heard, make other people look at this information, say it's not okay, and be the change you want to see in the world.